It is Friday, July 10th, 2026. NATO allies pledge 70 billion euros to Ukraine as defense spending surges across the alliance. The World Health Organization warns global cancer cases could nearly double by 2050. And France books a World Cup semifinal spot with a win over Morocco. Here are the day's top stories. NATO released the Ankara Summit declaration on July 8th, adopted by allied heads of state and government. The declaration states allies pledge 70 billion euros in military equipment, assistance, and training for Ukraine in 2026, with allies affirming sovereign commitments to sustain at least equivalent support in 2027. The declaration also confirms allies agreed that contributions to Ukraine's defense industry count toward the alliance's 5% GDP defense spending target set in 2025. The 5% target, agreed at NATO's 2025 summit in The Hague, requires 3.5% for core defense requirements and 1.5% for related security spending by 2035. NATO says allies have already reached roughly 4% of GDP just 1 year into the 10-year plan. The Ankara Declaration builds on that trajectory while formalizing continued military support for Ukraine into a second consecutive year. Why it matters. Locking in multi-year Ukraine funding removes uncertainty for Kyiv's defense planning, while counting that aid toward the 5% target gives allies incentive to sustain support without straining separate budgets. The White House said on July 8th that President Trump secured new defense investment commitments from NATO allies during the Ankara Summit, citing roughly $3 billion in major deals and joint ventures. Companies named include Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, RTX, Boeing, Rheinmetall, and Anduril, covering missile systems, surveillance drones, and munitions production expansions across Europe. The White House fact sheet frames the deals as part of a broader shift it calls NATO 3.0, under which allies take on greater self-reliance. It states NATO allies increased defense spending more than 20% last year, spending $120 billion more than in 2025, and cites $54 billion in allied procurement of U.S. defense equipment in 2025 alone. Why it matters. The administration frames rising allied spending as directly supporting American manufacturing jobs, tying foreign policy outcomes to domestic industrial capacity in the defense sector. The World Health Organization released its Global Status Report on Cancer 2026 on July 8th, developed with the International Agency for Research on Cancer. WHO states cancer causes more than 26,000 deaths daily worldwide, with an estimated 20.6 million new cases and nearly 10 million deaths annually. Without urgent action, the agency projects annual cases will rise to nearly 35 million by 2050. WHO attributes the projected rise mainly to population growth and aging, alongside more than 40% of cases linked to modifiable risks, including tobacco and obesity. The report finds stark survival gaps. 87% of breast cancer patients survive 5 years in high-income countries, compared with about 42% in low-income countries. Why it matters. WHO's data frames cancer as an accelerating global burden shaped as much by unequal healthcare access as by disease itself, with survival gaps between rich and poor nations widening the human cost. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported total non-farm payroll employment rose by 57,000 in June, with the unemployment rate holding at 4.2%. BLS also revised prior months lower, cutting April's gain by 31,000 to 148,000 and May's gain by 43,000 to 129,000. BLS data show job gains concentrated in professional and business services, up 36,000, social assistance, up 25,000, and healthcare, up 22,000, while leisure and hospitality lost 61,000 jobs. Average hourly earnings for private sector production and non-supervisory employees rose 7 cents to $32.38. Why it matters. A weaker headline number combined with downward revisions to prior months points to a cooling labor market, a factor the Federal Reserve will weigh heading into its late July policy meeting. FIFA confirmed France defeated Morocco 2-0 at Boston Stadium on July 9th in a World Cup quarter-final. Kylian Mbappe scored despite missing a first-half penalty and set up Ousmane Dembélé for the second goal, sending France into its third consecutive World Cup semi-final. The result sets up a last-four meeting against the winner of Belgium versus Spain. FIFA's Match Center confirms the quarterfinal was part of the 48-team 2026 tournament jointly hosted by Canada, Mexico, and the United States, running through the July 19th final at MetLife Stadium. Why it matters. France's third straight semifinal appearance underscores their status as the tournament's most consistent contender, raising the stakes for the remaining matches before the final. Like and subscribe for fact-based news from official government sources only. Leave a comment. Tell us what stories you want to hear.